Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Federation Nation. I am Anthony. This is Collectors Entertainment Network, and this week we are going to talk about the second Saturday night's main event. But before we get into all that, guys, I'd like to ask you, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, please comment down below. Let me know your Saturday night's main event memories. Guys, please share this video with anyone you think may like it as well. And guys, definitely please like the video because that helps a lot. Also, go on over to Facebook. Check out the Collectors Entertainment Network Facebook page. Give that a like. And while you're there, join the Federation Nation group because I want to see you guys showing off your WWF vintage collections. Definitely want to see it. All right, let's get in to Saturday night's main event, Episode 2, October 5th, 1985, this week on Federation Nation. Alright guys, the second episode of Saturday night's main event came to us from the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey on October 5th, 1985. It had some very, very iconic moments. It had the wedding of Uncle Elmer and his wife Joyce. It had Hogan versus Volkoff. It had Bundy and Stud versus Andre and Atlas, which of course leads in to other things. Let's get started. The opening, as it came on, was the sort of an interview with Nikolai Volkoff and Blassie with Mean Gene. This is before they did the sort of back in the studio. They were out in the crowd, like right before you get out into the crowd, but with the crowd in the background. It was Nikolai and Classy Freddie Blassie being interviewed by Mean Gene. Then all of a sudden it went to like pre-recorded comments by Hulk Hogan in the same exact spot right in front of the crowd. Then they did Mean Gene with Hillbilly Jim, Uncle Elmer, and Cousin Junior. And then Piper interrupts, and then they cut to the opening. Then when they come back, they do the intro with Vince and Jesse. And it's crazy because the crowd can hear them. It's not just for the home audience. The crowd can hear them, and you could tell the crowd could hear them because anytime they mention like a baby face like Hogan or whatever, the crowd erupts. So you know that they're actually being heard by the crowd themselves. So that's really cool. I kind of like that. So then they get right into the Hogan versus Nikolai match. I think Nikolai's already in the ring about to sing the national anthem. In fact, then he does sing the national anthem. They cut back to Hogan with Mean Gene in that sort of interview area. And of course, Hogan's, hot under the collar and can't wait to get to the ring to take on the Big Russian. He gets to the ring. It's a pretty standard Hogan match, except this one, Nikolai jumps him before the ring and gets the upper hand. But of course, Hogan has a quick comeback. Then they're fighting, all that good stuff. It's a power versus power match. Hogan and Volkov go to the floor. Hogan goes to, I think he was going to ram Volkov's head into the steel, but of course Volkov pushes Hogan into the steel post, turns the tide. Volkov is now has the upper hand. Finally, they get back in the ring, all stuff. Volkov has the upper hand, but then it was like the most anticlimactic Hogan comeback. It was like a body slam that Hogan kicks out of, then hulks up. You never thought Hogan was about to lose. The thing of like the hulk up was always like the guy got his finishing maneuver on Hogan, and Hogan kicks out of that. But then it was like a body slam. Hogan kicks out, hulks up, throws Nikolai comes running into the turnbuckle. Hogan moves. He bounces off the turnbuckle, falls on the floor, drops the leg. Hogan the win, raises the flag, all that stuff. So it honestly wasn't, even for a Hogan match, it wasn't the match was okay, but the finish was just, it wasn't that great. It was just so sort of anticlimactic. Not a typical Hogan comeback after like kicking out of the guy's finisher. That brings you to your first commercial break, and as soon as they come back from the commercial break, there is an interview with Hogan post-victory, again in that spot. They didn't have a backstage spot for interviews like they would in the future. Everything was done sort of right at the entrance to the arena with the crowd behind them. I love that. That to me is so vintage, classic 80s WWF Saturday Night's Main Event. I absolutely love that. Then they cut to an interview with Hillbilly Jim, Uncle Elmer, and Cousin Junior. The same thing in front of the crowd, which brings us to the Uncle Elmer match. It was Uncle Elmer accompanied by Hillbilly Jim and Cousin Junior, and he took on Gentleman Jerry Valiant, and we had a new world record. Beat Bundy's record of 9 seconds at WrestleMania 1, which we'll get to in a second. This was 6 seconds, and I think this really kind of was 6 seconds. Literally, the bell rang, Valiant ran at Uncle Elmer, to tackle him. Uncle Elmer picked him up, body slammed him, dropped on him, 1, 2, 3. So new world record right here on Saturday Night's Main Event, 6 seconds. Then they show you the Bundy, they do a flashback to Bundy's 9-second victory, which was clearly not 9 seconds. It was at best 20 seconds. But anyway, they actually show you the clip of WrestleMania. It's actually an entire match from WrestleMania because it's only 9 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever. But they show you. But now there's a new world record, 6 seconds, Uncle Elmer. I wonder if that still stands today. And of course, after the match, they all are, back with Mean Gene in the interview area for an interview. Then they cut back to the ring. Jesse the Body is in the ring with Bobby Heenan doing a body shop in the ring. And this is where Bobby Heenan announces the bounty on Paul Orndorff's head is going up from $25,000 to $50,000 to put Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff out of wrestling. And of course, he's got a match, Orndorff that is, with Roddy Piper. And Piper wants to collect on that bounty. So we got Orndorff versus Piper. They just attack each other at the bell. It is a street fight. In fact, they even at one point, I think it was Jesse said it's a street fight with ropes around it. That's all it is, McMahon. And that's really what it was. They fight, they claw inside, outside. They finally come outside the ring, and they say it's a double disqualification, but it seemed more like a double count out. But the official thing that they said on the show was a double DQ. They fight all the way back. They fight literally under the platform that Vince and Jesse are on. They go under it and then out the other side and then back into the the backstage area, the locker room area, and they're still fighting until Piper finally gets into a dressing room and gets the door shut, and Orndorff can't get to him. So that's the end of that. But it was a pretty good match, fight. I mean, obviously, there wasn't going to be a decisive winner because that feud was, still going on. And plus, neither one of them, Piper would never lose basically to anybody, at least not an in-the-ring shoulders on the mat or give up. He'll do a count out. He'll do a DQ, but he's not going to lose to anybody straightforward. And Orndorff's not going to lose in that fight. So they did the best they could, and it was really a street brawl. So pretty good match. I liked it. And it was just really intense. That, of course, brings us then to the wedding. The second wedding in television history and the first since 1969, where Tiny Tim got married. And of course, it's fine. I mean, Uncle Elmer can barely hear the preacher or whoever it is, the officiant doing it, so he keeps asking him to repeat. But other than that, it goes off fine until, of course, they say, does anyone have a reason to object? And that's when Roddy Piper comes out with the microphone yelling, I think you stink and she stinks and this whole thing stinks and all that stuff. But they then continue with the wedding after Piper leaves because Hogan and Andre are about to get out of the ring and go after him. So Piper, turns around and heads back. And then they finish the wedding and everything is good on that front. Which then brings us to the next match. It's Bundy and Stud versus Andre the Giant and Tony Atlas. Good match. Typical big guy match. A lot of, big guy moves, brawling moves, stuff like that. But at one point, they get Tony Atlas out of the ring and they injure him. So it is just, so he can't even respond. It's just Bundy and Stud attacking Andre in the ring. Eventually, after a 5 count or whatever, the referee disqualifies Bundy and Stud, but they just keep attacking him. And then, with Atlas out of the ring, Andre is left there defenseless. Hogan comes running in from the outside, from the backstage area, still in his, like, tux from the wedding part, the ripped off shoulder tux that he's wearing, still in that, comes running in, takes out Bundy and Stud, which then, Andre can take on one of them. So they clear the ring, and Bundy and Stud turn tail and run, and that's going to set up something a little bit later. But if you guys remember on the last Saturday night's main event, the first Saturday night's main event we've talked about in a previous episode of Federation Nation, it was George the Animal Steele's face turn. And apparently, since then, the Animal has gone missing. So Mean Gene goes on an investigative reporting to find George the Animal Steele, and he finds him at the Detroit Zoo, where he's been, I guess, living with the animals there. So that's a pretty funny interview that Mean Gene and George the Animal Steele do. It's not even just an interview. It's sort of like they go to all the different animal exhibits, and they always have like a funny line for each one. So it's actually pretty funny. So that's Mean Gene and George the Animal Steele at the Detroit Zoo. And then we move on to another match. It's a tag team title match. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Brutus Beefcake with Luscious John in their corner. The champions versus Tony Garea and Lanny Poffo. It's actually a pretty good match. You've got some good hands in there. Obviously, Greg Valentine's great. Tony Garea is a great wrestler. Leapin' Lanny Poffo, also a great wrestler. Beefcake, he could get by. Not the greatest mat technician, but he's not, he's not a horrible wrestler either. So it's a pretty good match. Of course, the champs hold on to the title. The Dream Team keep the tag team titles. Oh, and one little point of interest about the tag team title match. They got Wyndham and Rotundo in the crowd, like in their street clothes. Like, they had to buy a ticket, because Wyndham's also got like an eye patch, because when Beefcake and Valentine beat the U.S. Express for the titles, he went after him in the eye with some sort of foreign object. So, on the last main event, which was in May, Sheik and Volkoff were the champs, and by the October one, the Dream Team are the champs. And somewhere in between, the U.S. Express were the champs. They held the belt twice, and both times were, like, what were they, for like a month? I mean, they won it really, like, only maybe a month or so before WrestleMania, and then lost it. Then they didn't have, at least May they didn't have it. Maybe they got it at the end of May, maybe June. And then they lost it. They showed them losing it in August. So, I mean, we're talking the U.S. Express, really, they were like the top team in the WWF, and they really only had the tag team belts on 2 occasions, but both for really short periods of time. But anyway, they are in the crowd, in their street clothes, like they bought a ticket. It's kind of weird. Why wouldn't they just be watching from backstage? I don't know. I guess because maybe Barry Windham was out of action, so they couldn't be with the wrestlers, so they had to buy a ticket. I don't know why they would, but that was what they were going with, and that's where they were. They didn't really kind of play into it any bit more than that. All right, and then we get to the wedding reception in the back. I'm assuming all this part was pre-recorded, or maybe even post-recorded after the event, but after the crowd obviously had gone. You've got Tiny Tim there, like I mentioned before. Tiny Tim, their last network television wedding. He was there to present them with a ukulele. You've also got a poem by Jesse the Body Ventura, in which he kind of makes fun of the whole thing. And when Hogan, I think it was Hogan and Orndorff were starting to go after him, he kind of runs away, and Hillbilly Jim trips him, and he goes face first into the cake. But speaking of Hogan, they tease, Vince McMahon's there and Jesse's there before the poem, right? And Vince is sort of interviewing Hogan while they're sitting down and eating, and they announce right there that on the next Saturday night's main event in 4 weeks, because of the events that transpired earlier, it's going to be Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant versus Bundy and Stud, and that is coming up in 4 weeks at the next Saturday night's main event. And that just about wraps it up for that episode of Saturday night's main event, the second episode, October 5th, 1985, from the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Guys, again, I'm going to ask you, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, I'd love to have you back. Please comment down below. Please share this video. Please like this video. And go on over to the Federation Nation Facebook group and join that and show off your vintage WWF collections and share your memories over there. All right, that's it for this episode. We'll do the third episode at some point. I'm doing these a little bit spaced out at this time, but we definitely will get to the third episode and then the fourth episode and so on and so on. But that's it again for this week, the second episode of Saturday Night's Main Event here on Federation Nation. So until next time, guys, have a good one.